CCTV footage shows the last moments of Hannah Cornelius and Cheslin Marsh as they were about to part ways after a night out. But in a split second, their lives would change forever as they were ambushed by a gang of ruthless criminals. What did Hannah and Cheslin go through in their 11-hour ordeal? Who were the men who kidnapped them from this parking lot? And what was the fate of these two innocent students? Before we get into this case, I want to warn you that this is a very disturbing and graphic story, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. Without further ado, let's dive into the case of Hannah Cornelius. Our case today takes us to a beautiful and stunning country, South Africa. South Africa is one of the most diverse and vibrant countries in Africa. It boasts a rich culture, a breathtaking natural beauty, and some of the most friendly and hospitable people you'll ever meet. With its vast grasslands, sandy beaches, and majestic mountains, South Africa offers many attractions that will delight your senses. But behind this beauty lies a dark side. South Africa is also plagued by violence and crime, especially against women and girls. This is largely due to gang activity and femicide, which are rampant in many parts of the country, and sadly, these crimes often go unnoticed or ignored by the international media. Today, we're focusing on the town of Stellenbosch, which is situated east of Cape Town. Stellenbosch, also known as Eikestad in Afrikaans, meaning City of Oaks, is a university town surrounded by hundreds of vineyards that contribute to South Africa's famous wine industry. These factors make Stellenbosch a very affluent and prestigious area to live in. Many streets are shaded by oak trees and lined with chic cafes and art galleries. And it's in this prosperous town that we find the life of Hannah Cornelius. Hannah was born on February 12, 1996, to her parents Willem and Anna Cornelius. Her father Willem was a magistrate for a nearby town, while her mother Anna was a lawyer. So you can imagine that Hannah grew up in a stable and professional household. 3 years after Hannah was born, she became a big sister to her younger brother, whose name is not disclosed for his privacy. Hannah was very protective and caring towards her brother, who had some learning difficulties. She was always there to help him with his homework and encourage him in his hobbies. Hannah was also a talented and kind-hearted teenager. She loved drama class and was praised for her acting skills. She also played the piano beautifully. She was a creative genius in many ways. Hannah excelled in high school, where she was popular and happy. She worked hard and achieved 6 distinction grades, with an average score of 85 or more on graduation. She also had a high school sweetheart named Finello, who she adored. They even went to prom together, much to her father's dismay. He didn't like seeing his little girl growing up so fast and moving away from him. But there was no stopping Hannah's ambition and curiosity. She was determined to pursue higher education and explore the world around her. She applied for university and chose to study humanities, which suited her personality and interests perfectly. And 2 months later, she received the good news. She was accepted into the program. Hannah enrolled at Stellenbosch University in 2015, where she quickly made friends and enjoyed her studies. She had a passion for helping others, especially children, and she volunteered at a local charity that provided support for disadvantaged kids. She also had a part-time job as a waitress at a nearby cafe, where she was well liked by both customers and co-workers. One of her close friends at university was Cheslin Marsh, another humanities student who shared her values and passions. Cheslin was also a nice and funny person who had a flair for music. He played the guitar and sang in a band with some of his buddies. Hannah and Cheslin were not dating, but they had a strong friendship and often spent time together. On the night of May 26, 2017, Hannah and Cheslin decided to go out for some drinks with their friends at a local pub. They had a fun and relaxing evening, chatting and laughing with their mates. They left the pub around 11 p.m., and Hannah offered to give Cheslin a ride to his flat, which was not far from hers. She drove her blue VW Golf to the parking lot outside his building, where they parked and continued their conversation. They had no idea that they were being watched by 4 men who had been hiding in the shadows nearby. These men were Vernon Whitbowie, Geraldo Parsons, Eben Van Niekerk, and Nashville Julius. They were all members of a notorious gang called the 28s, which was involved in various crimes such as robbery, drug dealing, and murder. They had been looking for a chance to strike that night, and they saw Hannah's car as an easy target. As Hannah and Cheslin were talking in the car, Whitbowie approached them from behind and knocked on the driver's window with a screwdriver. He pretended to ask for directions, but as soon as Hannah rolled down the window slightly, he forced it open and stabbed her in the chest. He then opened the door and dragged her out of the car. Parsons followed him and grabbed Cheslin from the passenger seat. He hit him on the head with a brick, knocking him unconscious. The 2 attackers then threw Hannah and Cheslin into the back seat of the car, where Van Niekerk joined them. Julius got into the driver's seat and drove away with the car. They had just kidnapped Hannah and Cheslin, and they had no intention of letting them go alive. Hannah and Cheslin were now at the mercy of the 3 men who had kidnapped them from the parking lot. They were terrified and helpless as they were driven to a remote location where the men planned to rob and rape them. The men took Hannah's phone, bank cards, and jewelry and demanded her PIN code. They also took Cheslin's phone and wallet and threatened to kill them if they lied or resisted. The men drove to a nearby ATM where they withdrew money from Hannah's account. They then drove to a secluded spot near a vineyard where they decided to rape Hannah. They dragged her out of the car and forced her to the ground. They took turns raping her, while the others held her down or watched. Hannah was in excruciating pain and begged them to stop, but they ignored her pleas. Meanwhile, Cheslin was still in the car, bleeding from his head wound and fearing for his life. He could hear Hannah's screams and cries, but he could not do anything to help her. He was also afraid that they would come back for him and rape him too. After they had finished raping Hannah, the men threw her back into the car. They then drove to another isolated spot near a paintball range, where they decided to get rid of Cheslin. They dragged him out of the car and told him to lie down on some rocks. They then hit him on the head with bricks several times until he lost consciousness. They thought he was dead, so they left him there and drove away with Hannah. But Cheslin was not dead. He was severely injured and in shock, but he managed to regain some consciousness. He realized that he had to get help, or he would die there. He crawled to a nearby road, where he tried to flag down passing cars. But no one stopped for him. He was covered in blood and dirt and looked like a homeless person. He was also in a state of panic and confusion, and could not speak coherently. He eventually found a security guard at a nearby construction site, who called an ambulance for him. He was taken to a hospital where he was treated for his injuries. He had multiple skull fractures, brain bleeding, facial lacerations, and hearing loss in one ear. He also suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder and depression. He told the police what had happened to him and Hannah, and gave them a description of the men and the car. The police launched a massive manhunt for the suspects, hoping to find Hannah alive. But it was too late for Hannah. The men had driven her to another remote spot near a dam where they raped her again. They then stabbed her in the neck with a screwdriver, severing her spinal cord. They then smashed her head with a large rock twice, crushing her skull and brain. They then dumped her body in some bushes and fled. Hannah's body was found later that morning by a passerby who alerted the police. She was pronounced dead at the scene. She had suffered horrific injuries that were incompatible with life. She had also fought bravely against her attackers, as evidenced by the defensive wounds on her hands and arms. The police were able to track down the suspects using CCTV footage from the ATM and the parking lot, as well as DNA evidence from the car and Hannah's body. They arrested 4 men: Vernon Whitbowie, Geraldo Parsons, Eben van Niekerk, and Nashville Julius. They were charged with murder, rape, kidnapping, robbery, and attempted murder. They faced trial at the Western Cape High Court in 2018, where they pleaded not guilty to all charges. But they were found guilty by Judge Roshani Ali, who sentenced them to life imprisonment for murder and rape. Julius was acquitted of murder and rape, but convicted of robbery and kidnapping. The judge said that none of the accused showed any remorse or guilt for their actions. Hannah's family and friends were devastated by her death. They remembered her as a beautiful, intelligent, compassionate, and creative person who had so much potential and so much to offer to the world. They also praised Cheslin for his courage and resilience in surviving his ordeal. They hoped that justice would be served for Hannah and Cheslin. This case is one of the many examples of the violence and crime that plague South Africa, especially against women and girls. It also shows the courage and resilience of the victims and their families, who seek justice and healing in the face of such horror. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.